This week's UFC is taking place in Abu Dhabi, which means let's all bet on the Russian fighters, right? Kicking off the show, we got a plus 240 underdog in Martin Budai fighting Marcus Buchecha as a minus 300 favorite. This is just a UFC newcomer in Buchecha, a jiu-jitsu whiz. And the most likely outcome of this fight would be a dominant, grappling submission win for Buchecha. But for these type of fights, I think it's always smart to kind of just wait and watch because you never know, right? We haven't really seen him too much in MMA. Buchecha could go for takedowns and fail, right? And this could end up as a very boring clinch, 3-round, just a boring fight, which would not work well in favor for Buchecha. The computer here, our AI system, did pick Martin Budai as a legend, which is a 65% dog. Personally, though, I'm not the biggest fan of that pick. I just, the most likely outcome here would be a Buchecha, submission, just because, grappling skills in the heavyweight division is so powerful, right? Just look at Walter Walker submitting Kennedy Nzechukwu in the first round. Again, the computer did pick Budai at a 65% win rate. I think I'm sticking with Buchecha, and if you're gonna go Buchecha, you probably want to just go submission, or to be safe, submission and decision double play. The round betting here is just way too hard. It could be an early first round submission, it could be a later second round submission, it could be a 3-round boring decision. So round betting here is not in the play. Next, we got Mohamed Yahya fighting Stephen Nguyen. And we shouldn't be betting this fight, man. There's no reason to put any of your hard-earned money on either of these two guys. They're both not very good. I think, it's basically you're betting on the guy who's less shitty, which the word on the street is Stephen Nguyen. Yahya, I've looked at his film. He just doesn't really have too many ways to win any fight because his biggest strength is probably his submission grappling, but in order to do that, he would need to get you down onto the mat. But his takedown is atrocious. Nguyen is just another dude in the UFC. He's been on the Dana White Contender Series 3 times, right? He lost his first win, won a second win by decision, and then finally got a finish in his third win, and then he lost his UFC debut. Looking at the computer pick here, another crazy one. The computer did pick Yahya as another legend. There's actually quite a bit of legends on this card, one of which is pretty good. But I don't think it's this one. I don't see how anyone could put money on Yahya with confidence, just because he hasn't shown any capabilities of being a legit UFC fighter. So my opinion, I do think the new win would be the pick. And I think it started at minus 300, but I think it's minus 400 now, which is crazy. I don't think the confidence level you get for a minus 400 should be way higher than the confidence you feel as you watch the Nguyen and Yahya fight. The over 1.5 could be a pretty good play at minus 200, just because neither guys are really finishers. This is playing pretty close to home for Yahya, so he would at least have the toughness and the home crowd to kind of get him through the first 1.5 rounds before potentially getting knocked out by Nguyen. Next, we got Ibo Aslan fighting Billy Anakana, and I think Aslan should win here. Aslan is a very, very heavy puncher, 100% finish rate. I think all of them are by knockout, or at least most of them. He's young. He's really, really good. He lost his last fight because he kind of gassed a little bit. He started strong and then got submitted by Ion Kutalaba. Billy Anakana, though, his opponent, is the reason why I feel so good about Aslan. Anakana, like physically speaking, he's not bad. Like when I watched him fight, he's got good reflexes, good hands, but his mentality is weird, man. Like when he was fighting Guskov, he was just getting peppered, and then it wasn't like he was taking much damage. So he goes on one knee and he's like smiling to the ref. He's smiling at Guskov, but he's not defending himself at all. He's literally crouched on one knee, holding his head, and Guskov is just punching him on the face. And then he's just like, he doesn't want to fight. He's smiling. He thinks it's a game, and he just gets choked out. He sticks his neck out to get choked, and then the moment the choke is in, he easily taps. So is he really UFC level? Is he in it just for the quick cash? We don't know. But what the computer knows also is that Aslan rather, is a gladiator, which is an 83% favorite win rate, which is very good because Aslan is also my pick. So that is aligned at a money line of negative 275. That is not bad at all, especially for a parlay piece. Round betting is a bit tough. The computer does like the under here, and I can see why, just because Aslan finishes all of his fights. But I don't know. I feel like Alicana is pretty tough if he wants to be. So this could go over 1.5, or maybe 2.5. I don't know. So round betting, not too confident. Aslan is definitely the pick and one of the most confident picks at that. Next, we got a women's fight between Amanda Ribas fighting Tabitha Ricci, and as the money line suggests, it's going to be a very close fight. If you look at Topology, 75% of the people are picking Ricci to win. But if you look at D ratings, 72% has Ribas. So it is tough. Ribas is coming off of a pretty bad loss, or two losses, but one of them is pretty bad against Mackenzie Dern. But yeah, I mean, these two women really don't have any ways to like consistently finish each other. So I mean, it's gonna be just a very, very most likely pretty boring 3-round fight. The computer did pick Hebus rather as a champion, which is an 88% favorite. So yeah, it definitely sees something that I don't, because I don't know if I can be 88% confident in Ribas winning this fight. I am confident, however, in the rounds. I think over 1.5, although the line's crap. I know it's minus 750. But I do feel very confident in that for whatever it's worth. You can also just play with the over 2.5, or even just having the fight go to decision. I think this fight is best bet in the rounds department and not in the winner department. But if for what it's worth, the computer did pick Hebus to win at an 88% confidence. Next, we got Davy Grant fighting Damon Blackshear. And I mean, if you've ever watched Damon Blackshear fight, you can see the physical gifts. You can see the tangibles. He's got a slick submission game. He's got range. He's got recently he's showing really good jabs. But output is a big problem with Blackshear, and that's always a point of worry, especially when he's fighting against Grant, who is known for his output. And although he's 39, he's old. Recently, he's shown pretty good. He's beaten guys that he probably shouldn't beat, and he's lost like an undefeated Daniel Marcos. It was a close fight, honestly. So I'm just kind of worried about the output. But having said that, Davy Grant doesn't really do well. Even if the fight goes to decisions, he usually loses decisions just based on like damage. He doesn't really wear damage well. Like he's bleeding and bruised up. So maybe that's why he usually loses the decisions. The computer does like Grant as a scout, which means a 34% win rate for a dog. Given the odds, it's probably not bad, but I mean, this probably tells us more about Blackshear most likely going to win. And I do feel Blackshear is going to win here. I don't know if it's going to be a submission that most people think it is. I don't think he just comes in here in the first round and just takes Davy Grant down and submits him. I don't think that's how it's going to play out. I think it's going to be a lot boringer than most people think. But I still do think Blackshear pulls it off. And because I think it's going to be boring, and the computer thinks so as well, the over 1.5 is a pretty good play. Next, we got Muslim Salikov fighting Liel. And yeah, I think Liel is coming back to Abu Dhabi with a vengeance. Last time around, he did lose probably one of the worst decisions in MMA history against Feredinov, some Russian guy. I think every single person in the world scored it for Liel to win that fight. If not 30-27, at least 29-28. But he lost that decision. So I think he's coming back to Abu Dhabi, not wanting this fight to go to decision. And what better partner to have to do that than Muslim Salikov, the king of Kung Fu. Salikov is, frightening old in the gambling world for us. 41 years old is not a good place to be, especially when you're fighting someone 10 years younger and as explosive as Carlos Liel. The computer, however, does like Salikov as a legend, with the third legend of the week, and I just don't like this one as well. I can see a way in which Salikov wins the fight, and that's through a really powerful spinning roundhouse kick or a back fist or something really powerful. But the likelihood of that happening, I think, is tremendously low. And if it doesn't happen, what is Salikov going to do, right? Salikov is not known for his output. He's not known for his gas tank. I think Liel hasn't beat in all those categories. So unless he catches Liel, Liel should win this really, really easily. So that's going to be my pick. And because it's against, Salikov with the computer picks, I'm not going to be super confident in it, just toning it down a little bit. The under, I think is a really good play on minus 190 because if Liel is going to win, like I said, he probably does want to win this, by finish. And if Salikov is going to win, it's almost guaranteed by finish, or it might be, the new worst decision ever if Salikov beats him in a 3-round decision. Next, we got Bryce Mitchell fighting Said Nurmagomedov. No relationship to Khabib Nurmagomedov. Said Nurmagomedov has never been finished. Bryce Mitchell has also never been finished. So these two guys have never been finished. The money line odds are close, and I can see why. I think it's wise to not put too much on either of these two guys. Said Nurmagomedov, just based on the name, some people will bet him, but he's not a wrestling tank like the other Nurmagomedovs. He's more of a striker with questionable cardio. Bryce Mitchell, on the other hand, is more of that wrestler grinder, but he makes very questionable decisions, right? So it is a really tough call, honestly. It really is his pick who's going to win, and the money line shows it. And if they can figure it out, what gives us the right to just, confidently pick one guy over the other? I don't think that's where the play is. The computer doesn't have anything for this fight either. And I think the best bet here would be in rounds, if anything. I think the over 1.5, the computer agrees as well, is pretty good. But it's just weird. This fight gives me weird vibes. So, over 1.5, you can dab on it, but I'm not going to say this is a guaranteed lock. Although, to be fair, neither of the guys have ever been finished. Next, we got Nikita Krylov fighting Guskov. And why? Oh, man. This is probably one of the most divided fights out there online. When I first saw this fight, I couldn't believe that Guskov was actually an underdog, just given the career trajectories and I know their age looks similar, 33 and 32, but their fighting age is really not that similar. Krylov has 40 fights has exactly double the fights of Guskov, and he has taken a lot of damage. Look at Krylov in his last fight against Dominic Reyes. He got destroyed. He got knocked out. And and that was coming back from a major shoulder surgery. So how much trust can you put in Nikita Krylov at this point in time? He's a very wild fighter. He has 93% of his fights, end by finish, or 93% of his wins by finish, rather. But he fights very, very wildly, and he blitzes in, and that's when he gets caught by Reyes. That's when he gets caught by Ryan Spann, even before turning the fight around and beating Ryan Spann. But I think he's gonna get caught, running in, blitzing in by Guskov. That's what Guskov does. Guskov catches guys who are, not defensively sound, and I don't think Krylov is defensively sound. You might be scared that, Krylov is going to take Guskov down and choke him out easily. No one's like, did Krylov do that to Dominic Reyes? I don't think Krylov is just going to go in there and become just the next calling of Khabib Nurmagomedov and start wrestling 24/7. I think this fight actually takes most of the time is going to be standing up. And in that case, I can very confidently say that Guskov will connect with Krylov's chin, and that should be the end of it. And the computer agrees as well. Luckily for me, Guskov actually is the 4th and final legend on this card. Never seen 4 legends in a card before by the system. And I think this probably is the one that's aligned with logic. And I think this is a very good legend to have. At plus 170, it's really, really sweet deal that we're getting here. So Guskov is the pick for both the computer and me. And the under, I guess you could dabble with, but I'm not going to touch that. I think the plus 170 is good enough. Next fight is a super close fight between Almabayev and Ochoa. Almabayev was supposed to fight a different fighter, I think Temerov, but Ochoa is a last-minute replacement, and he is a pretty damn scary last-minute replacement given that he just knocked out Cody Durden in his last fight. Although he did have some problem with Cody Durden's wrestling in the first round. He got taken down. He was fighting from his back, but Durden got kind of tired in the second round and got got destroyed. The point being is I think Almabayev is better than Durden at every aspect, but especially in the wrestling department. He did get knocked out by Manel Cap in his last fight, but that's freaking Manel Cap, so that's nothing to worry about too much. I just don't like picking this fight because I think Ochoa is really good, and they're I think in these type of fights anything really can happen. The computer doesn't really have anything here as well. I think the line is a bit too close to make a good statistical play. Round betting here is not too bad. I think over 1.5 is relatively safe. I don't think either of these two guys are going to get finished in the first 1.5 rounds. So if anything, that will be my only play for this fight. Next, we got Shera Bullet Magomedov fighting Marc-Andre Barriault. And I just don't see these two guys in the same level in mixed martial arts. They are both good in their own levels, which is why it makes this fight kind of interesting for people to say, oh, Barriault has a chance. I don't think he has a chance. Barriault is fighting guys at a tier that's lower than Magomedov, and he's fighting them. He's not like blowing through his opponents. His last fight was a first round knockout over Bruno Silva, but that guy didn't even want to fight, man. That guy was already contemplating retirement before the fight. He just wants to be home with his family. I just don't see this fight, anything else in a sacrificial lamb for Shera to bounce back after losing his fight to MVP. This is, of course, happening at UAE. Shera, it's going to be his home. So whether this fight goes to decision, which it could, because Shera Bullet doesn't really just go ham and start looking for finishes. He usually takes his time and lands his flashy combos. So whether this goes to decision or it's like Shera knockout, I think Magomedov should win. I'll be very surprised if he doesn't. The computer picked Barriault as a Hail Mary, which is like a 50-50 underdog. Statistically speaking, but I feel like this time it's got to be Magomedov winning. So that is my pick. Magomedov, the over 1.5, I think, is a solid play at -165. Just because Magomedov, people see him as like a crazy KO artist, but if you actually watch his fights, not really. If you're banking on him to finish the fight in the first round, you're going to be sweating because he doesn't fight with that type of urgency. Moving on, we got Peter Yan fighting Marcus McGee. Another one of those fights which I think appears like two guys in different levels, except this one's a bit different because of just the output. I'm just worried about Peter Yan's ability to put out enough output and make the right decisions in a 3-round fight, where he doesn't have the time in the 3rd, 4th, 5th rounds to just overtake an opponent. And Marcus McGee is a freaking damn hard opponent to overtake because his cardio is really good and his output's really high. Having said that, I think their level of striking and experience obviously favors Peter Yan. I just worry a lot about the fact that the first round could go to Marcus McGee easily, and then a second round could be a toss-up. I think Peter Yan should win the 3rd round if it gets there, which I think it probably does get there. So split decision maybe, a 29-28 across the board unanimous decision. Those are all very likely to play, and of course, being a split decision, there is a possibility, although pretty low, that it goes to Marcus McGee as well. Having said all that, the computer does pass on this fight as well. And for me, I do think Yan wins. Just not super confident about it, so I'm not even gonna, fully recommend a moneyline bet on Peter Yan at -400. The over 1.5, however, I feel really confident with. Peter Yan does not get finished in the first 1.5 rounds, nor does he finish other guys in the first 1.5 rounds. So that is a pretty safe over 1.5. And the last fight on the card, the main event, we got Robert Whittaker fighting Renier de Ridder, and I am done betting against de Ridder. I bet against him so many times. I even from his very first debut, Gerald Meerschaert, I picked Meerschaert to win the upset, and then against Bo Nickal, I picked Bo Nickal. It's just weird. Like when I see, if you watch Renier de Ridder fight, he doesn't have explosiveness. He doesn't have athleticism. He's not right. He doesn't give you that sense of like crazy power, but he wins. He just wins. He's very big. He's very lanky. He's obviously scary in the submission department. And I just don't know about his gas tank, man. Like, I mean, I watched the fights that he lost to the same guy back to back in a different promotion, and he gave up. He was lying on the ground. He just gave up. So what does that say about a guy with a gas tank? Fighting, Whittaker, who has his own question marks, right? Where is his head at after losing to Khamzat Chimaev and getting his teeth, choked in? He had to replace his teeth. How's his jaw holding up, right? How's his mentality? What if Renier de Ridder gets him in a similar situation? Does he prematurely tap? I don't know. And my heart obviously tells me that Whittaker should win because Whittaker has been fighting way better competition than whoever de Ridder has ever fought in his career. Whittaker's fought Izzy, Whittaker's fought Chimaev. Whittaker's, fought Romero twice. And, Costa, Paulo Costa. So this really is a tough one. I think at this point, you can't just bet against the Ritter anymore, especially at plus money. He could have made us so much more money, right? If we just bet him every time at plus money. But I also just don't have the guts to bet the Ritter to beat Whittaker, because if Whittaker comes here and pulls off a vintage Whittaker performance, then I'll feel stupid, right? Well, the one time I don't bet against the Ritter, he loses. The computer does like Whittaker as a gladiator, which is an 83% favorite, and I think that the best bet here would be the rounds. I think the rounds are set at a pretty good price, honestly. The over 1.5 is only minus 240, and that is pretty cheap for a 5-round fight to go over 1.5 rounds between two guys who don't really start fights super fast, right? Before Bo Nickel gave up, that fight almost did go over 1.5. And it probably, it was like a minute away or less than a minute away. I can't remember, but it should have, right? Bo Nickel wasn't taking that much time. I don't know. I think over 1.5 for this fight is really good. I'm minus 240. And that is it. That is it for this video. Best of luck, and I'll see you next week.